So first and foremost, for those of you who are new to the AMAs, my name is Heather Ackles. I'm the Executive Director here with INTERalliance of Greater Cincinnati. And INTERalliance is one of the great local nonprofits here in the city of Cincinnati that's focused on STEM. We bring you lots of programming from Tech Olympics, our summer internships, as well as career camps. And this is one of our smaller programs that we have been doing in light of COVID. So today's guest is Ryan Stevens. He's a software engineering manager with Kroger Technology. Obviously, you guys know how I feel about Kroger, and I am thrilled to have Ryan with us today. So with that, I'm going to be monitoring the participants. I'm going to be monitoring the chat room, and I'll ask. I'm going to turn my mic off because you guys do, or not my mic, my video, because you guys do not need to see me. And we'll go ahead and get started. So Ryan, do you want to take some time and introduce yourself? Can you hear? Can you hear?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. Sorry.
I tried to unmute myself, but it kept popping up. The host had to unmute me. So, all right. So I'm Ryan Stevens. As Heather mentioned, I am a software engineering manager with Kroger, working on the install program in Kroger. Basically, the install program's main task is to maximize products being installed in the stores. Today, on the average store in general, there's about 1,000 out-of-stock items on a given store on a given day. And so, for example, ClickList today, if you do ClickList or you know about curbside orders, we fill them basically 91% as is. In stock right now, there's stores that we have in stock in, we're filling the orders at 98.7%, meaning rest of them, the items are substituted the delta. As far as my experience, I am an NKU graduate. I was a double major in computer science and mathematics. My emphasis of the 2 degrees was computer science, was software engineering. The mathematics degree was an area of concentration in probability and statistics. I went on in about 2006, decided I really like working projects, kind of being technical in projects. And I went on and got my MBA and graduated in 2008 with my MBA with a concentration in project management. I have started as an intern at Procter & Gamble in 99, graduated 2000, became a full-time employee, became an employee in 2003, Hewlett-Packard, and came to Kroger Technology in the Sunrise division, which was an alternative revenue stream at the end of 2018. So that's enough about me at a professional level. So Heather, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. So we received several really fantastic questions. And like I said, guys, make sure that you're sending them through the chat as well. I'm going to start with, because you were in Sunrise and some of that exciting R&D work, what new technology are you most excited about? And do you think it's here to stay or just a fad?
Okay. My goodness, you're going with the hard one. So as far as probably one of the things I'm most passionate about, one of my favorite things that's been in the last 5 years is getting more and more predominant is microservices, moving their web services from a service-oriented architecture to loosely decoupled, non-interdependent microservices that you can open up to multiple applications, especially on a service bus. For me, that gives your organizations a lot of flexibility. You're not bound by waiting for everybody, all your subscribers or the people who want data from your web services to catch up with you. You can run ahead of them. You can activate a common layer on a service bus. So it's some pretty cool technology in the past few years that came out around that. And I do believe that's here to stay.
Great. Yeah, I would agree. I don't think we're going to lose that. It really allows us to move much, much faster.
Yep.
So something very relevant, how are you using data and big data in this time of crisis, or how have you used it prior for crisis situations?
Right now, in the time of crisis and Kroger in general, we're using a lot of big data on COVID. We have been relying on our business partner 8451, which is owned by Kroger. It's really our data science analytics division. They are basically taking nightly sales data, uploading it into their data lakes, their data warehouses, and running algorithms around them, queries around them to generate reports to help us forecast really how things are shifting. Because early in COVID, the big demand was toilet paper. Still somewhat of demand, but demand's coming down. But now we're seeing meat and stuff starting to ramp back up. And we can see early indicators in nearly an overnight fashion of when to start shifting our inventory focus to the next thing that's piking up in high demand so that we can try to keep plenty of stuff in the warehouses and getting it out of the warehouses as quickly as possible to the stores to help our customer base.
Okay, great. They're not giving you any easy questions today. Can you
No, that's fine.
can you list the first 3 things you do when your code or a plan that you have put in place doesn't work as intended?
First thing I do, I haven't been a hardcore coder in the last 10 years. I do code some as a hobby, but when I was doing hardcore development, I did not immediately jump in. First thing, I did not immediately jump in and start coding. I spent a lot of time in design. I spent a lot of time looking at upstream dependencies, number 2, downstream dependencies. And then I spent a lot of time figuring out how I wanted my test to look at to verify I did it successfully before I started coding. Because I could spend 40% of my time doing those things, then it reduced the amount of time I needed to be at the keyboard coding and verifying at the end because I would have better luck achieving my outcome at the end.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And that question came from a leadership council student. Okay. We talk about that a lot, having a solid plan in place and then being able to be flexible. Mm-hmm. But always starting with that good plan.
And I will say most mistakes I've seen people make, especially when they come out of college, is when they're given a task, they immediately start coding, typing at the keyboard, not really thinking through the implications upstream and downstream.
Yep, absolutely agree. Pranav sent us a great question, but I'm going to filter it a little bit because Kroger does not support AWS.
Nor will they ever as.
That's right. AWS is like the 3-letter, 4-letter word at Kroger. So we're going to skip that. But do you suggest learning GCP or Azure more than the others? And is there something that you've seen a lot of times and keep coming up? So what do you recommend around cloud solutions, or where do you think the future is headed?
For me, I think for a lot of focus, and the focus for myself in learning recently has been in Azure. Kroger has a very big agreement with Microsoft, and we are trying to get as many of our products and applications and IT up onto the Azure cloud. So for me, a lot of Azure, and just with Azure, with its own space, it has its own life cycle as far as DevOps, as far as your coding, your hosting. Azure has its own service bus, comparable to the third-party service buses you'd buy in an open architecture like MuleSoft or TIBCO. And so, Heather, I'm not sure if that answered the question. It kind of broke up for a second for me.
Nope, that's perfect. I was part of the original partnership with Microsoft and Kroger, and one of the things that I felt was really fantastic with Azure versus GCP, and I'm a big Google fan, you guys know that. Yeah. Azure provided a ton of user support. I think Microsoft being in the personal computing arena for as long as they really focus on making sure that what they put out to the customer is somewhat intuitive. So
Microsoft, to help advance Azure, has been recently giving away free learning credits too.
Yeah,
a lot of free learning credits.
That's right. If you go to their Microsoft Learn site, there's a ton of Azure tools to get yourself up to speed. That's a good call out.
And if you're interested in the DevOps space, go to the URL azuredevops.com or .org. It's hosted by Microsoft. You can go into it. It has their DevOps book. It has real live examples of how to set up DevOps, and you can kind of go through and really see from a technical standpoint what those things are. So they've got a ton of free resources for people who want to learn that space.
Awesome. So kind of shifting gears a little bit from technology to professional development, what's the best way to utilize opportunities in college? Do you recommend any specific certifications along with coursework, or for the data technology track, maybe cloud computing? So what do you recommend to thrive there?
I think my biggest recommendation is take a deep breath, step back, and think about really what you want to concentrate in when you come out in the workforce. Sometimes you don't know, and you'll figure that out in college. But if you can tool yourself to meet that, if you want to do web development, then focus on, really getting solid with JavaScript. Start learning some of the frameworks, the supplemental frameworks like Angular, React. If you want to be a hardcore full stack development, of course, you start being self-disciplined, try to teach yourself, but also take the courses. But I think one of the biggest opportunities a lot of students miss is co-ops and internships. And that really gave me a good shot in the arm when I was a student. I started at beginning my senior year. I went to a job fair. I had formed a relationship with our co-op office, intern office at NKU. Wasn't getting a lot of bites at the time. There weren't a lot of folks, for some reason, during that semester really bringing in co-ops or interns at the time, but they would always have job fairs on campus. And I would put a suit and tie on. I would print off my resume, my student resume, and I would walk up and down the aisles. And I handed my resume one day to somebody from P&G. 2 hours later, when I got back to my apartment after class, I had a call from Procter & Gamble wanting to talk to me about being an intern. And so, don't sell that opportunity short, because a lot of companies, including Kroger, invest specific in training of the interns with the goal of being somebody we would like to hire once that internship is over and once you graduate. It gives us an opportunity as an employer to put our eyes on you and help mold you and get you to where that you can come in. And for me as an employer, as a manager, that's really powerful if I'm bringing somebody in that's very early in their career, because then you get a chance, your organization gets to mold them to your organization's standards. They already know the standards when they go full time, and you don't have to work to change some behaviors coming in that they picked up from other employers as far as standards, and you have to change and retool them as they come in.
Great answer. As a former Kroger intern, I absolutely agree. Kroger puts a lot of time in making sure that not only do you understand the technical side of their business, but have a full view of everything they do. And Kroger's definitely not unique in that space. P&G, GE, a lot of our big companies have amazing intern programs and leadership development programs. And for those of you who are new to me and are not aware, INTERalliance offers between 50 and 75 internships every summer to the high school students at companies like Kroger, P&G Aviation, and Western and Southern, and many, many others. So I can't recommend that enough. If you engage in the INTERalliance intern program and then pursue co-ops throughout college, you can have between 3 and 6 internships before you actually step foot into your official full-time position. So definitely take a look at that. Follow up kind of right there. In terms of internships, I'm sure you see tons of resumes. Is there something that a student can do from a resume perspective to really stand out?
Really, in a resume perspective, show that you're driven by passion. You're very passionate about what you're doing. Um, that's pretty easy when you read through resumes to spot somebody's passion. If they've self-taught there's something and delivered something major, being self-taught, that's really a great attribute to put in there as something that you did over a course, that you self-taught C sharp, these objects, or Java, or see self-taught yourself now a new framework language is Kotlin. So self-taught, prove that you are somebody who can be self-initiated and independent, can work independently or in a team setting. It gives you versatility. So there's a lot of things you can put in your resume for that. And just make sure your resume delineates between leading and contributing. I get a lot of resumes for tech leads, and it will say worked on this, worked on that. That doesn't tell me, did you lead this or did you just contribute to that? So really be very precise in what your contribution was when you worked on various things. So.
All right, perfect. Great answer. Um, so we're getting a lot of questions about the college area. I will follow up on that. please, 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 if you do a lot of those self-taught programs and are working on your own things, consider it like GitHub, because it allows you to put that link directly on your resume. And it's not just, I taught myself Python, but I taught myself Python, and here's an example of how I utilize it when
That's
I'm teaching
that's a
myself.
good point, Heather.
And tools like GitHub are pretty much industry standard. So showing not only that you're teaching yourself, but you're also using a tool that the company would have to teach you is incredibly important as well. So if you don't have GitHub, get it, learn it. So INTERalliance offers several training opportunities in GitHub, and we're offering more all the time. So sorry, I promise I'll stop self-promoting, but
Heather, no, this is fine. That's a valid point. GitHub is extremely important in our world because if you have projects that you work on, you can put your GitHub link on your resume and we can look at the projects. We can kind of look at what you did, and that's very important. That will help sell you too.
Absolutely. So talk to me about open source projects. Is that something that you and Kroger value, or is it something that just gets overlooked because it's not an enterprise type tool?
I really feel like it depends on the company. I worked briefly in a financial firm for about 3 or 4 years, and believe it or not, they were very big in open source because it was free. They didn't have to buy the packages, and they were very cost constrained. But you get in Kroger, I think it's a lot of it is overlooked because of the enterprise mindset when you get into your large corporations, and I do think a lot of it's valid. But like anything you get, third party, you treat it the same way. You test it, you do due diligence, you really test and look at what you get to make sure that it will fit into your ecosystem. It will be secured when it comes into your ecosystem, or what rails you can put around it to make it secure.
Okay. So I have a question for you. I think that so many people think that IT just in general is heads down coding. Can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of customer facing design and usability within your organization?
Oh my gosh, Heather, that is so important. Customer facing design and usability. And a lot of people think it's hands on a keyboard, only hands on the keyboard. But I will say this, I went through the transformation at HP where we went from being predominantly onshore to the count I was on was 92% offshore. I saw several workforce reductions. I probably saw 15, 20 rounds of workforce reductions. And the way I differentiated myself to stay ahead of that, because I really wanted to stay loyal to the company at the time, and I was interested in, I got into project management and customer facing. And I quickly got into product management, being a customer facing product manager. You can do a lot of things in IT from anywhere around the world, but one of the things that's very hard to do is really interact and work with your customers and basically working on customer driven design, having that hand in hand relationship, bringing them in, having them active, having them come into your office, go through your planning sessions, doing your sprint showcases, for example. It's very difficult to do those and get really good feedback from your customer by being halfway around the world from your customer in those type of roles. So I'm not saying, even though during the mid 2000s when things really started to pivot toward offshore development, there were still a lot of onshore positions, but in really large companies to cut the costs, especially the downturn in the economy in 2008, they were really looking at anything that their leadership viewed that could be done anywhere. And one of them was development. There was a lot of barriers to that, but I think if you can put yourself as, yes, I'm technical, I can be at the keyboard, I can code, but I can also, do customer management and interact with the customers, or even contribute to design as in product management. That is a very powerful differentiator to why you versus someone somewhere else.
Perfect. What is the hardest part about your job, Ryan?
One of the hardest parts for me is when I've got a resource that is not performing up to par. And basically, um, you coach them, you get them training, they don't increase in performance, and you have to start thinking about, okay, are they good? Are they just good enough to keep? Or do I need to bring somebody else in? Um, that's to me, that's hard. That's a very hard decision because when you do that, you are looking at people's livelihood. You are trying to balance the needs of the company, the needs of the organization. Um, what when those situations get easy is when there are certain behaviors that you can't not let fester in an organization, or certain behaviors that could put the organization at risk that you have to act quickly. Those are easier for me than somebody who's struggling and they're really trying to learn, but they're just seems like they're really trying, but they're not. That's probably the hardest thing about the job for me. And I would say it's challenging today because of COVID, the increased demand that COVID has put on us, and being, for me during the week, some days during the day I'm father, I'm teacher, and employee all at the same time because the kids are doing NTI.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's interesting with terminating someone or making that evaluation because you have to look at multiple factors. And I would say students on the call, it does not matter how amazing you are with your technology skills. If your soft skills, if you can't communicate and you can't collaborate and you are uh, kind of a deficit just as far as team morale goes,
Mhm.
let you go just as quickly as if you're struggling with the technology. So
Correct.
you see a cancer within the team, but also when you're making the decision on whether or not to let someone go, I always try to look at it as, am I keeping someone in a job that they're not good at and removing an opportunity from them to find their next point in their career where they could really just amaze themselves? Because no
Yeah.
one wants to do a bad job in the workplace ever.
Mhm.
Giving them the opportunity to grow is one thing, but having enough maturity and
Mhm.
passion to let them go when it's time is
Mhm.
a difficult skill to learn, and it's
It
very.
is. It is, and I will say this: one of the things, if I was to hire you guys out of school, or hire you, and especially in the first one-on-one we'd have a join up, I would tell you this phrase here: it's important for me for you to get good results, but it's even more important to me how you do those results. If you bulldoze, bully, or tick everybody off along the way getting those good results, you're not going to get a good review for me when it comes to fiscal year end review time.
Yep, couldn't
That's
agree more.
it's so important to get. It's just so important how you conduct and how you drive those results in a way. And I will tell you this: it's going to be sometimes it's going to be difficult because there are difficult personalities to work with in the organizations. But being able to identify what's motivating that person, motivating their personality, and work around that is something, a soft skill is invaluable.
Yep. So it's also good, guys, to take some internal reflection to figure out what exactly motivates you. Um,
Exactly.
Really good way to communicate that to your leadership so that you have that relationship. Obviously, I'm biased, but Ryan is such a good fit for the leadership team at Kroger because we all very much lead. They all very much lead with that "what's best for the people" mentality. And I'm a big fan. Hopefully, not too many of my P&G friends watch our recording here, but I know that a lot of our companies are that way, and I
Yeah.
can definitely say that for Kroger. So, what do you prefer, cats or dogs, Ryan?
I'm a dog person. I'm a dog person. Always jokingly tell my wife we got two cats, and I always like, she's like, why don't you like the cats? I'm like, cats are jerks. Dogs are loyal and friendly.
That's right. They're always happy to see you when you get home. I agree.
Hmm. And in fact, I'm in my office laying in the corner. I can't really move my camera easy. There's a 100-pound black lab looking at me. He's like, are you done yet?
Oh, that's great. So Vanya wants to know if you prefer being on the more technical side of the company or more project management. What made you make the shift? And does being in either limit career opportunities and growth?
I don't think so. If you balance, I prefer kind of being balanced. I want to be technical enough that I can stay up to date with what my team's doing and kind of sit in some of their working sessions. And it really helps me if I have to start having those hard conversations with individuals that are struggling performance. I'd be technical enough to really understand what the issue is and what they're driving. what's driving that issue, and where they can get help, and how that I as a manager can help them. Um, I think when you go into management, or go into project, if you're technical at the beginning, some of the best, most invalued long-term career project managers I've seen in my career have been technical project managers that they started out. For example, there's one gentleman that was an Oracle DBA. He became an Oracle engineer. He worked for Oracle for some point in time, very technical, and then he became a technical project manager back into HP and leading data warehousing or Oracle type of, for Oracle's version. I want to say it's ADW or CDW, might have been ADW, Atomic Data Warehouse back in the day. And he was one of the best project managers because he was very technical. He'd get in with his team start thinking about things. He's like, oh yeah, well, have you guys considered this? They're like, oh no, that's a great idea. We should go down that path too. Look at that. And but he was able to balance that by being suggestive and nurturing, but not authoritative with it. So I would suggest, try to balance it if you're not going to be purely technical. If you do go on the leadership or project side eventually in your career, make sure you stay in touch enough with technology. What basically put me into doing this was I very early in my career got responsible for co-ops at P&G because I was an intern co-op. Probably my second year of my career, I had co-ops that were responsible for. And I absolutely loved the mentoring, the coaching, and just really being a support structure and facilitator for those folks. And I enjoyed it. That's really all the reason I got into the direction I went.
Great. Great answer. So one of my leadership council students, Natalia, may be throwing a little bit of sass my way, but I tell them all the time that soft skills are more difficult to learn than technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. How do you learn those soft skills, and what do you recommend as far as personal development?
Oh my goodness. Soft skills, you have to really make sure you have the right emotional intelligence, emotional IQ. When I did my MBA, that was the first class I took, was called organizational psychology. And they spent a lot of time talking about, and then you get HR classes, emotional intelligence. And it has taken several years for me to learn when I'm acting out on emotion versus being objective and tactical. And so it's not an overnight fix. Heather's right. It took me longer to work on that than it did for me to go through and get all my degrees. And I'm still working on it at some point. And so for me, you have to do a lot of self-reflection. You have to look at what's my strengths, what my weaknesses are, and I've got to be honest with myself, and I don't want to bruise my own ego by being honest with myself. That's so important. Um, Self-reflection, and then basically introducing things disciplinary into your way that you conduct yourself, that when you hear something you don't like, separate yourself from it a little bit, calm down, then the collective thoughts start kicking in, and then you can tackle that issue or that. So you have to figure out what works for you. That's the only way I can put it, really, Heather.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think just to hit home on that, being honest with yourself is so incredibly valuable, because if you can't be honest on what you need to reflect on and improve on, you can't really expect anyone else to do that for you.
Yeah.
So find that ability to really reflect on yourself. I love that. Great answer. This is a good question. What one trait do you think is most important for someone to have to thrive in the workplace?
Oh, goodness, there's so many traits that will help you thrive. I think passion is very important, but I also think passion coupled with drive. But you have to look at your motivators. What's the motivators and the drive? Are you doing drive you bring a drive in the workplace to advance as fast as you can up the ladder? If you are, well, because your drive is that drive, the urgency to get to a certain status is overpowering the way you conduct yourselves to where your ethics come in line. There's various factors you have to look at, but are you drive to really to be the best in your role that you could be? That's appropriate. So drive is very important to me.
Absolutely agree with that. Um, any tips for being successful and making the most out of your first technical internship? And how do you make a connection that would last? And really, any recommendations on making the most out of networking?
Oh, that's a good question. So, be most effective in internship. Number one, learn as much as you can. You're getting, especially if you're getting paid, you're getting paid to learn hands-on in a job in the workplace, which is going to be very different than learning in the classroom. And you're going to probably learn things. Eventually, realize you're going to learn faster by being hands-on in the workplace. So, soak up everything that you can. Any free trainings that your employer or who your firm that you're interning or co-oping with offers you, take advantage of it, take it seriously. If they have after hours or weekend events, and P&G did this, I absolutely loved it. They would have not really happy hours, but it might have been a theater night, or on a Saturday we went up to Xenia to watch the Blue Jacket play on a Saturday evening on a tour bus. It was all the interns. Do that, because what they do is they put, a lot of the companies will put an executive leader. It might not be a CXO, but it'll be a VP or division president in those groups, and they're watching you, they're interacting with you, and interact with them. Don't be shy. Interact with them. Be appropriate. Don't, make them think you're going to be a party animal or be obnoxious, but be appropriate. Be professional. Talk about how passionate you are about what you're doing. They'll pick up on that. And next time they see you in the hallway at work, they'll probably say, "Hey, how you doing? So how's things going? How are you working on?" You're in the back of their mind. So network is very important. Um, as you rotate through internships, just maintain your network. Get on LinkedIn, and don't do it while you're working there. I advise people never connect with their bosses on LinkedIn until they leave. Then leave and then connect, and stay in touch.
Absolutely agree. And remember, if you want to internship with InterAlliance, you do need to have an improved LinkedIn account, managing your personal brand. And online networking is absolutely as important as in-person networking. So I couldn't agree more. Take advantage of every chance you get. Also, think about your elevator speech. So it's one thing when you are in those networking situations, but how do you best represent yourself when you only get a few minutes to make an impression? So that elevator speech is critical.
Mm-hmm.
And practice it with other people, because it might sound really great in your head, but once it's coming out of your mouth, it may not be so fantastic. So definitely. Um,
And that's a good test of emotional intelligence too.
yeah, absolutely. What do you have any book recommendations for us? I'm a big reader.
Okay, professional. I wish I could remember it. For me, there's a leadership book. It was by Laszlo Bock, B-O-C-K. Laszlo was a former CFO of Google. He talked about how they structured and things that they did for productivity and work at Google, which was very interesting. They found that if they introduced the nap pods and let people have nap breaks during the day, people were more productive, even if they're at the desk 6 hours a day coding, than they would be if they're at their desk 8 hours a day coding. As far as technical books, I'm a big fan of the O'Reilly books in the past. Not a lot of web development stuff with O'Reilly, but when I was doing a lot of systems level development early in my career, I was writing firmware for communications between P&G and the Walmart data center for basically the real-time inventory tracking system that P&G had to view and what their inventory was at any given Walmart store in the nation. I relied heavily on the O'Reilly books. They're easy to follow. All the examples, if you copied them verbatim into your compiler, they would build, they would work, they would run. A lot of books, you'll see this code thrown up there, but when you drop it in, it won't compile, it won't build without significant troubleshooting. So those are great books to look at. As far as technical books, if you're going to look at technical books, always just when I grab something, I grab the book off Amazon. I look at the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
If I see really all positive good reviews on Amazon, then I'm more inclined to pick that book up than I would be if I saw a mixed bag of reviews.
Yep, I agree. Work Rules is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite books. That's the Laszlo Bock book that you
Yep.
mentioned. I also
Yep.
am a big fan of storytelling. It's a Pixar book, and it's about how Pixar really maintained its brand and its image throughout a lot of challenging turnover and organizational changes.
And another good book too is about Carly Farina, the former CEO of HP. She was there several years. She was the one who really bulldozed some people on the board, got them kicked off the board so that she could get them to do the Compaq acquisition. They paid a lot more for Compaq than it was worth. And it basically ultimately led to HP to split off into different companies in 2015. And so the book's called Perfect Enough, and it presents really some interesting ethic dilemmas that she was faced with, and probably I would say some ethical behavior that she played into those dilemmas from her. She had, for example, one of the founding fathers of HP, David Packard. His father, William Packard, was one of the founders, and he was a board member, and he was the sole opposition to acquiring Compaq. HP's bylaws is 100% unanimous board vote when they acquire a company. And she held a secret board meeting to invite him, and she made a case, got the board to kick him off the board. And then the same meeting, then they voted and acquired Compaq. And so it's interesting to read what dilemmas that were from an ethical point of view.
Awesome. I always love hearing what other people are reading. It's one of my favorites.
Yep.
So from a learning perspective, specifically code, would you recommend, or do you prefer learning to code from books or from videos, online classes? What do you recommend for yourself?
Oh my goodness. I really do a mixed bag. There's a lot of good, if I'm looking for something that's very specific, there's some really good videos online that I can get for free, YouTube. If you haven't signed up for it, LinkedIn Learning is, I think, like $20 a month, $19 a month, I believe. I might be mistaken. There's one that's 19, there's one that's 39. I think LinkedIn's 19. They have tons of videos. For me, if I really want to dig in and peel back several layers of the onion, I love digging into books. But if it's a very narrow focus and I really just need to know something quick and I don't care about all the layers below it, I'm fine with the video.
Awesome. So from a management perspective, how do you distinguish between computer scientists and computer engineers, and does that differentiation really matter when you're hiring?
Mm-hmm. For me, hiring, differentiation, computer engineering, you do have some background to do software, not as extreme as computer science. Just like computer science, you have some background to do some computer engineering work, but not as, heavy as what somebody with computer engineering background would be. As far as differentiating, when it comes down to it, I look more at the experience and passion. If they have either, and they have the demonstrated track results, and when you go to interview them, I'll bring them for interview. If they're very passionate about what they do, you see that they're always an active learner, and they're very driven. I'm less concerned at that point about bringing a computer engineer into a role I have posted for a computer science graduate. So.
A really great comment. Thank you so much for that. And I agree. It's really about your experience and your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Great comment from David in the chat. The public library in Lexington offers free access to LinkedIn Learning. So for those of you Cincinnati locals, it might be worth hitting your local library and see if that's something worth something that they're able to give you. Another great question. Heard a lot of buzz about a master's degree in computer science. Is it just clickbait, or has a master's degree been devalued, or was it ever really valued in a dev shop?
It depends on what you're doing. I can tell you in the Sunrise division, we were really pursuing artificial intelligence, especially with our marketing platform. And we were looking more at the master's degree level for those, just because of just how abstract AI is. And this was AI on Azure using the AI engines that Azure provides. But the role I'm in right now, we're fine with bachelor's degrees. Master's, it's a bonus. We on our program, I would say our college graduates on our program, 75, 85, probably 85% of them are bachelors, maybe 12%. I'm thinking the stat was masters, and maybe like 3 or 4% PhD. And but they really perform together as a team. Um, the PhD is more in a architect type of role as far as overall design, overall strategy. But getting down, if you're doing development, um, it really depends on what the organization's doing.
Okay. What is your favorite operating system?
Oh my goodness, Linux.
Why Linux?
It gives me more control of the OS layer as a developer. Also, Windows has gotten a lot better over the years, but 10 years ago, hosting a web application on Windows versus a Linux environment, there was a lot of stability things at play. With Linux, you could leave a Linux server up, a Linux machine up for days, years, not have to reboot it. Windows servers, you'd have to reboot weekly, some of them sometimes nightly. And so there's the stability platform, as far as having direct access to the kernel, as far as if you get in systems development, you just had a wider range of things you could do within the operating system compared to Windows.
Awesome. Um, Really great question. Do you believe that it's worth studying AI, and do you think it'll be helpful for a student in the future?
I would say with machine learning, that's kind of really coming about. It would be good to study AI some if that's what you want to work in as a machine learning environment. Then definitely you would then need to study AI quite a bit. Um, as far as being important in my perspective, it depends on what you're working on, what you're doing. In my area, it's not very important. You go into something that you want for example, like if you're working for Dynatrace, which is a application analysis suite of tools that monitors the application behavior. When your application starts, it learns over a period of time what's baseline normal for your application performance or response time and throughput, and it starts seeing abnormalities because it machine learns. If you get in that situation where you have to do that type of machine learning, yes, then AI would be very important.
Okay. Another personal question. How is your work-life balance, and how do you make sure that you're maintaining both effectively?
Oh my goodness. So sometimes my work-life balance is up and down like a yo-yo, I'll be honest with you. Especially with COVID, I've been online after my kids go to bed at night. So I try to get done and get home. If I'm in the office with COVID, it's a lot better because then I'm done between 4 and 5 every day. I try to get home between 5:30 every day. Once I come through the door at home, I'm focused on my family until my kids go to bed. My kids are in bed until about 9:30 at night, and then if I need to finish stuff for the day, I'll log in at that point, and I might be up to 11:30. Um, it's not ideal, but that's the world that we live in. Um, for example, I went to Puerto Rico for 10 days back in February as COVID was starting to ramp up, and I took my PC with me. I would check my email every morning, and I would only reply to the things that are urgent. Then I flagged everything. I have a system that I flag my messages with, and so that I would make sure that when I came back, things were still under control and where they needed to be. So it's a tough one, Heather. When you get into management, it's tough to have that work-life balance at times, but you just have to find a way to make it work for you and your family.
Yep, I agree. And there are going to be times where it's harder than others. Obviously, everyone, I think, in the technology realm right now with COVID is under an immense amount of pressure. I know infrastructure is trying to make sure that they can support working from home. I know
Mm-hmm.
that retail specifically is very focused on making sure that those in the stores and on the front lines are taken care of. And manufacturing places are out of control right now, trying to make sure everyone has the resources they need to be successful. So we collectively as the public owe a whole lot to our technologists, who are sometimes the unsung heroes of this really crazy situation that we're in. But yeah, it certainly flexes and jives Let's see. Um, you want to talk a little bit just about what your day-to-day, what day-to-day looks like for you? What do you do each day? Hang on, I'm trying.
Oh, sorry, I muted because my son was in the background. I had to ask him to be quiet, and I didn't realize the host had to unmute me. So,
Sorry.
my day to day is different every day. To be honest with you, I usually I'll get online usually after 7 in the morning. I start checking emails, skim emails. I look at my calendars. Toward the end of the day, I try to make it a habit to what meetings I'm going to tomorrow. I'm prepped if I have to do PowerPoint slides. I'm doing it at that time. I have a lot of meetings during the day. If my week is very hectic, I try to drop 30-minute slots here and there during each day to make sure I have a little time to catch up. So day to day is very different. For example, I'm going to just pull up my calendar and we'll talk through today versus other days. If I look at my calendar today, I had a Talent Hub stand up. That's with our offshore team at 9 o'clock. I had a weekly touch point with a vendor at 9:30. I had we're starting OKR, what's called CHIP conversations, quarterly performance conversations. I had a prep meeting with a couple of managers at 10:30. I had with our product management lead a meeting, Heather, on APP on Android. I submitted a proposal earlier in the week that was reviewed with Jim Clendenin, and Jim liked it. He had me present it to him and Yale. Yale went overnight and got the money from Rodney and Gary Millenship. We're rewriting APP on Android, completely on Android, getting rid of the RAD devices on Azure using microservices.
Holy crap, that is quite a change. Sorry, guys. So AP
So
that
that's the
I
stuff.
had.
That's the stuff my day's at, and I'm having fun. I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Side note, when you see my boy Jim, please tell him that I said hello and that I miss him dearly.
Who's that?
Jim Clinton, and I haven't talked to him in forever, I think.
I ended up talking to him about once a week, and I would see him when I was in Charlotte every other week.
Yeah, that's
And so with me having international teams too, probably a thing to worry about, teams in multiple locations, multiple cities. I was supposed to go next month to India. That's on hold until further notice because of the current climate. My every other week cadence in Charlotte, I go to Charlotte for 1 or 2 nights each week, every other week. That's kind of on hold, so I'm kind of enjoying that. But as far as day in the life, it really depends on the day and what city I'm waking up in.
yeah, absolutely. So, last question. Do you think knowing a different spoken language is helpful in the technology industry, and why?
You're talking about a verbal spoken language like
Yeah.
Spanish or, you know, as far as technology, if you're in development, you're united by your programming languages. But if you're working with a specific location and that's predominantly non-English, or the English is kind of second, third language to these folks, um, if their language is something you can tool up in, it can only help. Um, Now, if you're working with a lot of Latin American teams, and it would be very practical to learn Spanish. But depending on where you're working at, if it's predominantly here in the U.S., probably not as important. But anything that you can do, show gestures to people of other nationalities and other countries that you're working with, and is a good faith gesture. But
Yeah, so the only caveat that I would have to that is if you're on front end design and you're a front end designer, I know that when we were rolling out Scan Bag Go, specifically in the southwestern part of the United States, we had to rewrite all of the front end screens and have them translated in Spanish because the Spanish speaking population in that area of the country is so prevalent. So it's something that we were very much at a loss for in my group, and it would have been really fantastic to have someone with those skills. So I think knowing another language is never a bad thing, but I think that it's a requirement in technology to be successful.
And that's what I really meant by it can only help.
Absolutely. All right, well, we are at the end of our time. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us.
You're very welcome.
It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you those who have submitted questions. I know I didn't get everyone's question in, and I apologize for that, but please join us next week. We've got some more great speakers lined up for the rest of the month. And Ryan, I always love talking about Kroger, and I would love to learn more about switching things over to Android. That has been battle is probably an understatement for years. So it's interesting how quickly that progressed.
So I will just say this, the driver for the APP conversation came on pretty quick over the past 2 weeks is because the store associates are getting overwhelmed with click lists and they want to hire more pickers, but they don't have enough rads if they put more pickers on a shift.
Yep.
And so we've been told get off the rads as fast as we can so we can free up those devices for click lists.
That's incredible. Another thing for everyone on the chat to think about: supply chain sometimes really drives innovation, whether we like it or not. But thank you again, everybody.
You're very welcome.
Ryan, have a fantastic day, and everyone stay happy, healthy, and mentally sound.
You guys too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.